Bentley Custom Off-Road, and what's the next project we're working on? An FJ Cruiser rear bumper. Can't wait, this is gonna be fun. Have not worked on an FJ Cruiser yet, but we've got some issues on this little baby. This guy wheels hard, as you can tell. Just came back from Jambo, so there's a lot of mud on here. I'll get that cleaned up later. Lost a rear fender cover, bumper cover. We're gonna keep this, I think, this plastic around here, across the top, and replace the whole bumper component on both sides, and then figure out what we're gonna do here. Probably mimic something here, but yeah, here we go. Let's get at it. So as usual, first thing we want to do is obviously take off the existing bumper to see what we're working with here. You don't have to worry about swing outs because he's got a tire that's on the back of the truck, and these look like the typical Toyota 10mm bolts. So there's 5 of them. So we're going to pop those off, and we're going to leave this here. So I'm not too concerned about that, but we're going to cut it here and back here. So I think once we get this cover off, there's probably a couple bolts up underneath that we'll deal with, and then because we're keeping this component here, probably going to end up cutting it around here somewhere, and all this is going to come off. We'll get that replaced. So here we go. Okay, if you're doing this just pops off from around the corner. Which way does this go? I think it was like that. Yeah, that was like that. Just little clips, pops off, and then what I was left with was these little brackets that held on this one on this side and that one over there that held that guy on. Just cut those off with the angle grinder. Took a utility knife for the very ends here because I didn't want to use the angle grinder around the metal in the back of the door or this fender up here. And then I just took the angle grinder and just cut very carefully through here so I didn't go into the steel. And then undid the bolts, 4 bolts underneath here. Did the same thing on this side. A little trick here because the door is in the way. I just reached in there. Closed the door actually. Just reached up in here, cut through. I'll trim that up later. But same thing with the angle grinder around here. And we're all set now. So now we got a better look at what we're dealing with. I can start planning on how I'm gonna protect that rear frame and what I'm gonna do with the corner. So probably gonna obviously mimic something to come up to here to create a bit of a, like an angled post, a little articulated curve, I think. And then just around here, keep it nice and tight so that we can keep that nice high clearance angle that we've now got. But we wanna finish it off, make it look nice. And I would imagine Hardin's probably going to take this mud flap off later. So I'm going to probably build it in so that it comes up and mimics this angle here. I kind of like that. I'd like to keep the steel high as possible. So he's got this massive clearance in behind here. And then bring it from here down to kind of curve into the bumper. And it's going to be a little higher, obviously, because we need to be about 1/2 inch below the door. A little bit of a swale down underneath the spare tire there. Kind of just thinking out loud right now, but I can see how that's all going to roll. So yeah, I think that's going to look good. Kind of use some of those lines, and maybe even with this being at a bit of an angle too, it seems like I think we could probably do a little bit of a couple panels to come down and angle in. Yeah, I like that. That sounds good. It's gonna be fun. Okay, here's my plans for the FJ Cruiser bumper. I'm gonna keep this fender liner or flare and this top part here because it integrates really well with the back door. We're not gonna touch that. But I'm gonna have a couple of angled pieces. I'm thinking I see 3 distinct panels here, one here, and one here. And based on the size, I don't want to be too many levels, but I'm going to do one here and then one down to there. Probably take this bracket off, and then one across the bottom to tie into the rear frame bolts there. We use 10 gauge on the side here, and then 3/16 steel on the back. There's 2 mounting locations up in here. Their old toe loop hitch thing, not hitch, but toe tie down points. There's no M12 bolt locations or M8s or even M10s or anything further forward. So I'm going to tie into these. This is a short enough span that'll be fine. And then there's a couple of bolts up in here for the hitch. So we're going to incorporate the steel into those. So I'm going to put a panel on across the bottom, one on the back, and obviously one on the back that's going to rise up a little bit to meet up with the door, probably about 1/2 inch below the door. So tie into these little supports here and just have it slide up underneath that. Looks like there's some old brackets here, so I can just rest the steel right up on those. That'll work. And then on these as well. So whatever height that is, I'm going to draw some templates up tomorrow. And then the old bumper curved up around this corner here, so I'm going to do some little faceted curves. So typically a good easy way to do that, and I'll show you tomorrow, is take the steel like a single piece. Because it's a small area, what works really well is to score the back side of that and then bend it and then weld in where you've scored it and it's opened up because you've bent it, and you can actually create some pretty good curves. So I've got probably a point here and then curve here, so I'll just flare out those score points there, and I think that's going to work really nicely in along here. And then that'll flare it because we're going to angle the back bumper across the corner here. So that's going to be kind of cool, I think. So we're going to have a platform here. It's going to flare up to there. And then this is going to come tight here and then across the back here. So we have as much clearance on the corners as possible. Keep it a nice high departure angle. That's my plan. Do maybe some cardboard templates tomorrow. Draw that up. Cut them out. Put it up here. Show Harden what I'm thinking. I think he's going to like it. And then start cutting steel and burning it in. It's going to be fun. First FJ Cruiser build. This is going to be a good time, I think. I'll find out. Here's the initial process of coming up with a design on the bumper. So get everything off and then sit back and take a look at it. And these are just the first cuts that I've made, just to kind of go over some of the angles that I'm looking for. But then once I've got that up there, then I'll grab a marker and I can more easily visualize it. So now I'm going to probably cut a straight panel that comes up and angles up like that, right? And then this one I'll expand up that way to here. So that'll be a plane. Then this will be another plane or 2 or 3 along here, and same thing along here. So once I get all that together, then I can redo it and get it a little tighter in terms of how I look and the lines a little crisper. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing on the back here because Harden's looking for some lights to go in behind or in the back of the bumper. So we've got a 4-inch gap here for the frame, and then there's a couple of inches above the frame where the top of the bumper is going to sit for the most part, other than, you know, the dip that we're going to have to create for that tire to come into. So I'm thinking he's looking to get a light bar and maybe a few rectangular lights across the back here. So I'm just going to figure out how deep those lights are and how far back I need to make the bumper. And then what I'd like to do is have the lights as high as possible in this deal, so hopefully up there. And then once we come down to the face of the lights, hopefully not much more than this, then I can start angling it forward to get to the base of the frame here. And then once I know that depth here, then I can finish off the corner here and start to angle that out at the right point. So that's why I've got it like this. I'm not sure exactly, is it going out this way to get to the back of the bumper, or is it going to be more flush with the back of the frame if he's not putting the lights in? So figuring that out right now. Once we get that dialed in, then I can finish off this connection between the corner and the back of the bumper frame and then build it all out. So, well, here is the template for that corner. Pulled off the truck, and now we're just going to redo it. I'll probably redo it again after this, but I like to just get this initial template up and to give me a better idea of how I want this to roll. And then once it's up there, I kind of take some of these angles that I see and then mark out different options. And I think I'm gonna have to change some of this around here, I'm pretty sure. But I'm gonna make another one that's that plate here, incorporate it into that, and then rebuild this corner section here. Kind of okay with this. Now I know how deep we're gonna make the light for the back bumper. And it's really not deep at all. It's actually really thin. We've got this, let's see, off-7 lighting strip that is really low profile. I really like how this is made. Look at that. I'm thinking it's going to be like a big deep light bar, but no, it looks like it's about 1/4 inch thick. So maybe I'm gonna have to do this some wiring and such. The back plate of the bumper might need a bit of a 1/2 inch gap in there. I'm probably gonna incorporate these, the 4 holes that are in the middle here. I'm gonna probably use the bottom 2 for the support for the middle of the bumper. Although the hitch bolts are up underneath, I can always incorporate that and then just ignore the 4 bolts in the back. Haven't decided yet. We've got some more lights that we're going to stick across the top of the bumper, floodlights, and I think this is going to look really good. So I'm going to jump on redoing this corner template right now, and then extend the templates out across the top and back face of the bumper and underneath it, and then get busy cutting steel. I should get a good ways towards finishing this bumper off today, I think. Although I have a bunch of calls and gotta go get some groceries, so that'll dig into it. But yeah, today or tomorrow I should probably get this done. We're pretty close to done. And then Hardin's got some plans for fender tubes over the back wheel wells that tie into his rock sliders there. He also wants some kickouts on there, so they're gonna have me make some kickouts and tie in some fender tubes, or I think he's potentially ordered a set of rock sliders, but it's taking him too long to get them, so I think he's gonna try and cancel that order and just have me make the kickout and tie in the fender tubes. If he can't cancel it, then he'll wait until he gets the sliders and then come back, and then I'll make the fender tubes and see how it goes. Anyways, let's just get on this bumper and flush it out. Getting close to cutting. Always an exciting time, i.e. nerve-wracking. Making sure I've got everything figured out. So this is a template board I had from when I built the rear bumper on my 4th gen. The frame is the same, pretty much. And so what I'm doing here is doing some FJ specific numbers here to get the right height on the back plate here, and then to incorporate the lighting that Hardin wants in here as well. So I'm going to cut the lights out later, and then I'm also going to cut out angle the groove in for the tire, because it's going to dip into where I want the top of the rear bumper, at least on the sides, because I want to keep it a 1/2 inch from the door where these little braces are underneath the door there. So I'm going to rest the steel on those, bolted into these 2 bottom locations here, and not mess with the hitch. So I'm just going to leave that plate there, but I've got it bolted in over top of the hitch right now, but I'll cut it out around the hitch later. Weld it into this back plate here, and then over here you'll see I've got some angles that I'm planning on doing. So the bottom 2 inches is going to be flat because I want to bolt it into those bottom 2 locations. I'm going to angle it back to get to the face of the lights, and that's going to be 1 inch for the most part. Just a little bit of a relief there, and then up vertical for 1 inch or so to get to the top of the frame, and then up another 2.5 inches to get to the bottom of the door, and then it's going to go straight forward on the sides here. I'm going to have a little angled dish out here on the side, and I'm going to cut it at that line there, so it kind of ties into the side pieces of steel there that have all the facets and angles. And I'll put a little top cap around here. I think that's the plan. And then I'm going to score the inside of this piece of steel here, just bend it like articulated up, so it just kind of curves nicely, and then do that on each side. So that's the plan. So let me lay out. I'm gonna go find my 3/16 steel for the back plates here, and then I'll use 10 gauge for the sides and the corners, I think. That's the plan. Here we go. So I have 3/16 inch steel here, and I'm gonna take a couple pieces off the templates off that truck. I've got my back piece here, which is going to be 6.5 inches high by 41 inches long, and then we've got that kind of weird shaped bottom piece, and then the top piece, which is going to taper in a bit. So I'm going to get those 3 pieces out of this steel, make that nice and strong, and then go into the 10 gauge for the wings. I think I've got them pretty much set, but once I get these cut and welded together and popped up into the frame, then I know exactly where I need to connect the wings to. So I'm going to start from the inside actually, and then go to the end. I think that's what I'll probably do. I know when I'm building the templates, I usually start from the wheel well and come back, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just going to be able to connect it. But since I know where the back has to be, I'm probably going to do the side pieces from the back plate first, and then work my way around to the front. So that's what I think I'm going to do. Okay, so first of all, we got 6.5 inches. By 41. It's a good chunk of steel, that's for sure. As we start redoing the panels, they start to get a little cleaner looking. So this is gonna come out a little bit more like that. And I'll start to work on the different angles, but these are the plate ideas that I've got. So I kind of like that. This will mimic that line there, maybe angle in a little bit, but there's not much room in there for the it'll angle in like that, keep that 1/2 inch gap in there. And then that'll cut down. I'm probably going to take these little fins off this bracket here. Getting a little tighter and cleaned up. More or less where the tilt panels are, or the facets for the different plates. So in here I can probably outline that in black, but they're individual pieces of cardboard, so I'll have a top cap on here as well that'll cover the top. This is sneaking up a little bit, but there'll be a 1/2 inch gap below the black plastic. I'll clean that up later. And over here, now I know we don't have to go super far behind the frame. I can angle this in, keep it nice and tight. Now that, once I've got this set, I'll cut this out of steel and then do another piece of each to flip to put on the other side. That usually works pretty well. Sometimes I need to adjust it a little bit, but I'll have to tidy up the front part here. So I've got this fender here, which I'm not sure how I'm going to finish underneath here. I like to keep it as high and far back as possible so that I don't mess with the tire. But Yeah, that's actually not so bad there. I can take the old mud flap and cover this off. Just bolt it up into here. Actually, that's probably what I'll do is, they're in there somewhere. I'll clean it up with that. And tie the steel into the back of that mud flap and then just cut the bottom of the mud flap off. I think Hardin and I talked about that and he was good with that. I'll check. And now it's, I gotta cross pieces in and then start cutting and burning some steel in. Kind of long. I decided to go with this plate across the back and just cut it into 3 different pieces. I've got to adjust the top part here though. This is a little too high to fit under the tire, and the tire's offset a little bit, so it's going to probably come in like that. I'm not going to have to lower that one, but I'm going to have to take a chunk out of this. I'm thinking kind of like a bit of a angle like that, across and back up again. So I'll figure out the distances based on kind of where it intersects the bottom of the door, which is up here, which is interesting because that's right where that change of direction on the frame happens. And again here, which is just a little inside. I think that's probably what I'm going to do is make the angle changes on those points and just kind of cut it along there. It's probably going to be like that. Right, probably like that. And then I can bolt this into place because it'll fit up there then. And I've got the back piece cut. It's going to go from here to the same point on the other side. But again, I'm going to have to drop that down in the middle here. Probably halfway out in order to meet up with the little dip that I've got in this one here. I think that's looking good. Just getting all these main key pieces figured out first is the biggest part of it. Well, I guess they're all kind of integrated, but this is the trickiest design part. This is the part that I just need to get all set properly, because once I get that set, everything comes in off that. So anyways, that's where we're at. So we're doing pretty good with the plates across the back. I still need to cut out the dip that we're going to put in the top plate there. I've got it marked off, so I'm going to cut that next, but I want to get some of these tacked into place. So we've got the under wings underneath the frame. You can see them here, got them clamped up into place. And then I've got the back face plates bent, cut out here, and then this is going to get tacked in along there. So I'm just going to pop that in now. It's attached. If I change my mind on placement, I can always open those up and pull them apart. But right now I just want to get things stuck together so we can move forward. We got the back plate in, under plates. I actually think I'm gonna make another plate to span underneath here. It's gonna go, I'll weld it into here. It's gonna cover over top of that plate and weld in over here. And then I'll take the bolts that were gonna go up in here and then just put it right through the 3/16 plate. So it'll drop down a 3/16 of an inch. And then that'll support it really nicely from the bottom too. So that way I can crank the bumper up and then secure it with the face here. Okay, so next I'm gonna work on the top, because then I can tie this whole deal in here from the side. I've got to make this probably a little bit wider. Shackles are gonna go right in alongside here. I'm gonna weld in a piece of steel that's gonna go that way along the side of the frame, and then the shackle's gonna weld into that piece of steel. It's not actually going to get welded into the frame, obviously. Okay, so let me get working on this deal here and pop that on top of there, and that should be a pretty good amount for today. And then I can See what the time's like, maybe get some work on these wings. There's a lot of cutting that goes into those. So I'm not sure if I want to do that today or tomorrow morning. So let's see. I think that's going to be good. That top plate has to drop down a bit more so it butts up against the edge of the other plate. Right now it's looks like it's sitting about 3/16 of an inch over it, especially right here. Okay, I think I got that. So I'll make that bottom cover that goes in this hole here. And for some reason, I need to trim this. It's out a little too far, so I've got to cut it. Get the edges good. So make that bottom plate, and then I can start working on the wings. Got the base in now for the back, so happy with that. I'll fill in these little corners later. However, right now I'm going to start working on the side panels. Start connecting the back bumper around to the side. I think I'll start here and then move my way around. I've got some shackles to put in. And then there's going to be a LED light bar that goes along this whole strip here and goes out a few inches on either side. And then going to get the shackle to go just in underneath it. So that's the plan. It's like a cardboard factory exploded in here. Here's where we're at right now. So far we've got the tire divot or indentation pulled out. I gotta fill in these little guys, but I'm gonna do that later when I pull the bumper off. And I start doing all the welding, and we've got some light ports that are gonna get cut into here on each side, and then a pretty sweet light bar is going to go in all the way along here, and shackle mounts just off the sides of the frame on each side. On here, I'm going to weld in a piece of steel that lays on top of this plate that's going to go down underneath here. See it on this side here. And then we got the side corners, so I think this is like the third or fourth cutting of cardboard, but I like this. It's looking good. It wants to straighten out, so it's popping up, but that's what it's going to look like. A little half-inch gap up there. I'm going to paint this black underneath it before we put the bumper on finally, and you won't even see that gap in there. But there we go. I like it so far. It's coming along nice, and I think getting ready to start cutting some steel. So we got 3/16 inch steel on the bottom plate here, and in the back of the bumper. Then I'm going to transition to 10 gauge out here on the corners to save a little bit of weight. And I think that's where we're at right now. Gotta mess around with this little bit here. Gotta trim this straight and bring a little bit more of a line along here instead of extended that out a little farther than I wanted to, or should have, or whatever. Anyways, and that seems to be a little rounded here, but I'll angle that in as well. So I like it so far. And then up here we've got this mud flap, but really all I care about this is this part here to keep the junk out of the bottom of the bumper there. So we'll put that back up in there, and these little pegs shoot up in here somehow, kind of like that. And then I think it'll be like that. And I'll transition these pieces down here to cut in around that back rubber piece here that drops down. Yeah, there we go. Coming along so far. I'm gonna do a quick update here, and I'll actually show you how I go through cutting these panels out. So obviously we've got the cardboard that you've seen a million times. I've got a few different iterations to get to the point where I'm at now. And this is gonna cut out around the rear mud guard here and put that in place, and we're gonna trim that off at the bottom. However, typically what I'll do is I'll do the cardboard first, and then once I get closer to the end, then what I'm gonna do, this is gonna go, how does this go? Like this. Then what I'll do is I'll start cutting these pieces out and fitting them into place, and then they almost always need adjusting, which makes sense because cardboard sags and it's not as structural as steel, obviously. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to pull this piece off. I'll set up the camera, and I'm just going to go through how I make this panel here and cut it all out. You don't need to see me doing every single little piece of the panel because it's boring as heck. But we've got the shackle mount here. I've got one on the other side as well. Have to mess around with some welding and sanding through here because I don't want to carry this bend out into the corner. And then we've got a support here for the shackle mount underneath. This is all in line with the bolts for the frame. And then this is going to get bolted into the top plate as well, or welded into the top plate here, across here, and then it's going to curve up to the top here, and then we're going to have a cap that comes across here. So I got three more pieces to put in, one here, one there, and one on the other side. And as I'm doing this, what I typically do is I'll do the same exact piece on the other side. Almost always needs a little bit of adjusting, sometimes not. And then when I'm done that, what I'll typically do is come back and do a little template of the exact piece of steel, and then toss the old cardboard component away. So anyways, that's where we're at there. But yeah, let me set the camera up, and I'll just go through how I typically measure out, adjust, cut out a steel, and then weld into place. And I'm using 10 gauge here for the wings or the corners. 3/16 was all in the middle. And this is just a little lighter. And typically when I'm doing this stuff, I'll use the cut-off wheel because it's pretty quick. 3/16, I'm usually going to use the plasma cutter to cut that out, because especially those big long lines, I do not want to be holding onto an angle grinder for a big long cut. So it's a lot easier to just hit it with the plasma cutter. We're welding it anyway, so this edge doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. As you can see, it leaves this little ridge here. Okay, let me jump into this next phase. So this piece here is the next piece, and then I'm going to work my way up to the top and then cap everything off, and then I'm going to connect it with that top curved plate that's going to go under the corner of the door. So I'm just going to pull this off. I'll save that. And I'm going to put this up in here like that. And what I'm trying to do is match it with all the lines that I've got here. It's actually pretty close. If I at the back part there, it looks like I'm overlapping here. So I'll grab my marker and either use a measuring ruler, or I'll just use this. It needs to trim out a little bit there. Put that off. That looks like it's probably okay. I don't mind if there's a bit of a gap around there. And then here, I'm just going to go right to where I see the line is there. Width looks good, so right at the edge. And then down here, I'm just going to connect these two lines. Obviously, cut this off and then trace all that out on steel. Then once I've trimmed this, I'm going to go back to the steel, or back to the truss, make sure I like the way it fits, and cut it out of the cardboard or steel. Fit that on, obviously. Once I know I like that cut, then I'm going to go back, trace it, and then put it on, cut it out of steel, and then put it on the actual truck. And when I'm done cutting this out, I'll flip it, try it on the other side, and see how much, if it's perfect. One of the other pieces was exactly the same, so I just traced it out over there, and then cut it, and then weld it in place. Probably not going to be exactly the same, but that's fine. I'll try and see how it goes, and if I need to make any adjustments, I'll do that. And then we got them all cut up to size for each side, and weld them in place. And do the other side, and then to the next panel. Here's the almost finished bumper. So we've got a little trimming to do. I don't like how this is. It's not the way I want it. I'm going to be able to stack the top plate on top of here and put it beside this one. That'll give me the 1/2 inch that we want, but this kind of climbed up a little bit, so I'll just trim that off before I put the top on. And then got to put this little cap on here, weld in the shackled. I think I can get in there afterwards, although I might throw some welding here before I do that. It might be a little easier, I don't know. This side's good. I'm going to put the top adjacent to it, so it'll line up nicely. But yeah, then it's cut the lights out, tack this in a little bit more. I think I probably put too much weld down on the middle part of that tire indentation there, and it kind of bowed it a bit. And then I've got a big light bar that's going to go all the way across the back here. But I think I'm going to, when I weld this up, I'm going to cut a channel for the light in here and in there, maybe all the way out to the side there. That'll give it some support and structure for the bumper, so it's not just this big cutout all the way across. And then we're good. Only a little plate on the bottom here to hook up into the hitch bolts. And then yeah, mess around a little bit with this little indentation there. I don't want to carry that through to the sides, so I'll weld it in and sand it a bit. So, but there we go, almost done. I like it. Coming along really nicely. We got all the lights cut in. It's actually looking pretty cool. And now, right now, we're putting in the top plates here. So how I've done this is just created some score marks across the back, and then take the one piece of steel and bent it. And the easiest way is just to put it in the bender. So mark the score marks on the other side. I've got the lines marked here. So I just crank it down a little bit on each line. And that creates the bend that I need. And the score marks make it bend pretty easy and sharply too. So got a pretty good little strategy that'll work. And if you don't have a bender like this, put it in a vise and bash it with a hammer. Got this bumper done, and I think I probably skipped a bunch of steps there in the videoing process. So let's do a quick little recap and review on what I've got going on here. Obviously it's all coated, so I put a coat of primer on it. I love this rusty metal primer, even though it's not rusty. It does a great job of coating the steel. And the reason I also love it is it's orange or rust colored, and when I'm painting I can see where I haven't got enough paint on, so I love using that. And then I hit it with a black semi-gloss enamel. Where did I put that? These are Rust-Oleum. Here we are. Rust-Oleum protective enamel. Cut that down with about 5 to 10% acetone, and I spray it with my HVLP system. So I've got all my gear here. Okay, so we've got the tire cutout here. I put a couple of little inserts in there to cover up the little corners that opened up as I cut the steel and bent that down. Got a nice coating on here. It's already starting to cure and harden really nicely. Got some welds around, obviously, the shackles. And then there's it's an 6, I think, bolt in the forward part. There's actually 2, but I'm going to put one in the very forward part of the bumper and the undercarriage there. This is the cutout for the exhaust hanger, and then the body mount, and then obviously our M12 bolt holes. And I put a little, Hardin's got a undermount jack that hooks up underneath. It's in front of his bumper frame there. Neat design. So that comes, there's a plate here and it comes up underneath here. So I'm bolting it up in there, and then these are the 2 bolts in the bottom of the back of the frame. And I love the little curve that we've got here. Kind of mimics the curves of the FJ Cruiser, so that's worked out really nice. And got a nice little semi-gloss sheen on here, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the cutout for on each side for the mud flaps, so we'll trim those later. And then he's got some interesting light bars that we're going to put in here. So there's one big long light strip that goes across the entire back here, and we're going to use these little hangers to press it forward, and then little tabs at the end there of weld in order to stop it from jumping up and down and moving it side to side. So that light bar is going to go in all the way along here, and then we've got 2 floodlights that go in on either side. So it's actually a really cool look when it's on the truck. So there we go. So this is actually going to get tied into some fender bars that we're going to put in later. He's going to bring some rock sliders that he wants me to coat. Probably bring them about a week and a half from now when he gets them. And then we're going to put a mount here for the fender bars that are going to come in. So the mount on either side is going to be here, and we're going to carry these 1 3/4 inch tube fender bars across here and then down into the kick out of the new rock sliders that he's going to have. These are actually rock sliders. They're totally solid and fine, but he wants something with a kick out. He'd already ordered them before we started talking. Otherwise I would have just changed these and added a kick out to them. But hey, we're all good. This is going to work out great, and the truck is all washed. My driveway is filthy from mud from Barnwell. Outdoor adventure area. He's just come back from Jambo, so I should probably clean that up at some point in time. Anyways, looking nice. This is going to be a pretty sweet project once it's all done and put together. We have the FJ Cruiser bumper all done. These lights are sweet. They look awesome. So I'll show you a couple little clips of those working. But the bumper came out really nicely. Love the fit and the look. We got it dialed in nice around the mud flaps. I'm going to trim those up later. But Hardin will be back up here to drop off some rock sliders for me to coat and then tie into some fender tubes that we're going to attach in here somewhere, here or here. And I'll ask him then exactly where he wants this trimmed. I'm thinking just along here. Get rid of this mud flap, although it doesn't look terrible, so I'll see if he wants to keep it. Anyways, yeah, we got the lights in. That light bar across the back is pretty sweet. It's tied into the 4-pin trailer wiring harness. So when you put your indicator or brake lights on, that just lights up like crazy, as you'll see in the little short video clips. And then I just put the, I don't know if you can see it in here, but these are the bolts for the wiring harness. So it's just up in underneath. So if you reach up inside, there it is, right there. And there's the light harness. And then I'm guessing this white wire here connects to some other controller. So, but I'll let them dial that in. But yeah, bumper came together really nicely. Looks great. It's only 77 pounds, which is awesome. And yeah, that was a fun build. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see more builds like this, subscribe, and we'll catch you later. Cheers. Bye.